What's going on, folks? My name is Josh. You guys are watching The Outdoor Dude. Thanks for coming back to the channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking about 3 beginner frog fishing tips to help you catch more bass. Let's go. Now, tip number 1 is to be patient. Now, every time I make one of these beginner fishing tips videos, I get a bunch of intermediate to expert level anglers in the comments saying, yeah, well, this one kind of goes without saying. But the beginners don't know that. And if you watch enough fishing on YouTube and television, you'll see the beginners, experts, and intermediate level anglers, everybody in between, making these exact same mistakes, because frog fishing and topwater fishing is exciting. And you can often try to set the hook too dang fast, or you fish it too fast because you start to get really excited. On top of that, a new angler picks up a rod every day. And with YouTube being the second biggest search engine in the world, I try to make a lot of these beginner level videos to help out beginner level anglers that are almost always going to be going to the internet to find out how to do these things. When you first see that topwater explosion, often the bass doesn't quite have the bait yet. That bait's right here and the bass hits it and pops it up out of the water. Sometimes it's not all the way in their mouth, and you'll get excited when you see that and set the hook. What you really want to do is you want to give that bass a minute to grab the bait and drive it back into the water. Got 'em. And as they're doing that, they're going to close their mouth. And that'll give you the right time to set the hook. And when you do that, the hooks will drive into the fish's lip, giving you the proper hook set. So what you want to do is when you see that topwater explosion, you want to try to keep yourself calm. And it's really hard, but you want to try to keep yourself calm, count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, and then set the hook. Even a 1 Mississippi is going to give you the extra little advantage you need and the time that bass needs to close its mouth on that bait. Now, when you do this, you're giving that fish a chance to drive that bait deeper into the cover. So when you do set the hook, often that fish will already be in the grass or perhaps around a log. So you want to be using the proper gear for the situation. Now, I'm bank fishing in upstate New York, so when I'm fishing this setup, I like a 7-foot medium heavy with a 7:2 to 1 gear ratio spooled with 30-pound braid. But if I was fishing on the boat, I would go to a 7.5 heavy, extra fast, with a 8:1 to 1 spooled with 50-pound braid. Just because I'd be in an area where I'm more likely to catch higher quality fish than bank fishing the ponds and canals and creeks. Tip number 2, guys, don't be afraid to downsize. Now, a lot of the frogs on the market are all around the same size and they're pretty large. But a bunch of the frog makers out there started putting out mini versions or downsized finesse versions. Now, this is where you're really going to clean up, especially if the baits the bass have seen are all the regular sized hollow body frogs. It's like going down the bank with a finesse presentation right after somebody went down the bank with a large swim bait. And you can find yourself catching a lot of bass by downsizing your frog instead of using the larger normal size options. One of the baits that I really like a lot is the Mini Filthy Frog by Guggen Squad. Now, I know that name might put you off and make some of you just immediately click off the video. Those of you who have used the baits, you know they're good. Regardless of what you think about the owners of the company, the baits work. They catch fish. So one of the ones that I like the most is the Mini Filthy Frog. I also really like the smaller options from Booyah, the Pad Crasher, and the Poppin' Frog. These two are my favorite frog options on the market so far. I have other videos on how to choose frog colors or how to choose a frog. I'll put the link of those videos in the description if you want to see those and why I choose the frogs that I'm fishing. But I like the Guggen Filthy Frog and the Booyah Pad Crasher. The Mini Filthy Frog is 2 inches in length and only 3/8 of an ounce. When it comes to the Booyah Pad Crasher, it's not much smaller, but it feels a lot lighter. And if you're on a fishery with a lot of pressure, chances are folks are going to be throwing the normal sized large frogs. And that would be a great time to downsize your bait for a more finessier approach. Or if you find yourself on neighborhood ponds, creeks, where the bait won't be too large, downsizing your frog could offer you a lot more bites on those smaller bodies of water. All right, tip number 3 is that not all frogs are created equal. This meaning some frogs are better for open water and some frogs are better for the thicker cover. Now, a poppin' frog is a great open water fishing bait or for fishing around cover. But when you try to throw that thing into thick grass and heavier stuff, it's gonna get hung up a lot. The Guggen Squad Filthy Frog or the Booyah Pad Crasher are 2 great frogs that come to mind when I start thinking about heavy frog fishing in heavy, thick grass. There's a higher end bait that I also like to use, and that's the 10,000 Fish Tataki Frog. but I don't recommend that too much because people usually not too fond of the higher end stuff or the more expensive stuff if it's not by a couple specific name brands. But the Tataki frog is a really good option if you're willing to spend the money. Now, I personally just like the Guggen Squad Filthy Frog and the Booyah Pad Crasher. There are plenty of other frogs on the market that can do what these two frogs do. They're not the end all be all, and if you don't like them, don't use them. There's tons of people who make great frogs. These are just the frogs that I like, and there's a reason for that. These two have a nice flat belly. When throwing into thick cover, it's important for me to keep that frog right side up. A nice weight and a flat belly. Otherwise that frog can tip on its side a lot, and then the hooks are more prone to picking up debris. There's another video I did a while back on the Z-Man Leap Frog Walkin' Frog. I did a whole video fishing with it, caught a bunch of fish, and talked in depth about what I liked about the frog and what I didn't like about the frog. I'll put the link for the video in the description of this video so you guys can check that out when you're done watching this if you're interested. But in short, the conclusion I came to was that this frog, the Z-Man Leap Frog Walkin' Frog, had too tall and skinny of a body. And when you get into that thick cover, it comes up and over and it would turn on its side. And some of that debris would get caught on the hooks. Now, that's not to say that it's a bad frog. I did catch a lot of fish and I did have a fun time doing it. Where this frog comes into play is if you were learning to walk the frog, that tall body, the deep keel keeps that frog in the water right side up very nice. And when you're trying to walk it, there's not much trying involved. It walks incredibly easily. That's why I think this is a great bait to learn to walk the frog and learn that technique. But if you're trying to fish heavy cover, I really personally like the Filthy Frog or the Pad Crasher. But if you can find frogs out there on the market, and I'm sure there are plenty, that have that flat belly, those are going to be the ones you're going to want to use for fishing thicker cover. But this is why I say that not all frogs are created equal. And if you want to learn more about the Z-Man Leap Frog Walkin' Frog, I'll put a link to that video in the description of this video and you can check it out when you're done. Now, if you guys got any value out of this video, make sure you hit that like button, click the subscribe button and the notification bell so YouTube notifies you when we do a new video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.